Joshua and the people of Israel were at the wall of Jericho. And the people in Jericho, they had this army. But God told Joshua, you have your armor, you have your helmets, and you have your breastplate and your shield and your swords and everything, but I don't want you to use those. Now, here's what I want you to do to defeat the city. I want you to just take everybody and walk around the city once a day for 6 days. And then on the 7th day, I want you to walk around the city 7 times. And on the 7th time, I want you to shout and blow trumpets. Yeah. When Goliath and his army attacked God's people, the king's name was Saul. Okay, he's in the, you may talk about your man of Gideon, you may talk about your man of Saul. Okay, Saul was the king of Israel. He had a big army, and Goliath came with his army, and he attacked Saul and his army, and God's people, the people of Israel. But God had a different plan. They didn't have to use their weapons and all that other stuff. He had a different plan. He just had a little guy, a kid named David, who wasn't even a soldier. He was a shepherd boy, right? And he had a slingshot. He had his rocks. So he took a rock and he put that rock in a slingshot, and he shot it off, hit Goliath in the head, knocked him over, and the people of Israel went and they won the battle against all that big army. Now, in the Joshua song, it talks about the men of Gideon also. Gideon was another guy. He wasn't even a soldier. He was a farmer, and there was another army that was attacking God's people. And God had a plan for them. They thought we should get a big army together. And God said, I don't want to have a big army. Send a bunch of them home. So Gideon said, well, anybody wants to go home, just go home. So a bunch of them went home. They still said, we still have too many people here. So send a bunch more of them home. So they sent a bunch more of them home. Until there were like 10,000 enemies against God's people, and they only had a couple hundred people. Gideon only had a couple hundred soldiers. And God said, that'll work. We can work with that. So they decided so God said, here's what we're going to do. Everybody get a torch, because they didn't have flashlights. They just had torches. You had to light them on fire. So all these guys, they had like 300 guys. They had torches, and they put them in like a flower pot. And they went out in the middle of the night, and they surrounded the enemy camp. And all these guys, they had a flower pot with a torch in it, and they had a trumpet. And at the signal, they all broke the flower pots and raised the torches and flapped them around and blew on the trumpets, and they shouted for the Lord and Gideon. And the enemies in the camp, they all woke up in the middle of the night. They were all startled and surprised. And they looked up around the camp. They saw these torches waving and people shouting and trumpets blowing. And they thought they were being attacked. And they all got up, and these soldiers in the middle of the night, they were so scared and so panicked. They started attacking each other. And so the ones that didn't kill each other ran off. They were so scared. And that's how the Lord brought about this great victory with the men of Gideon. Gideon, who was just a farmer. Now, all these three things, Joshua and David and Gideon, none of these guys, well, Joshua was, but these guys weren't really winning big battles with big armies and big soldiers and big weapons. They were doing it because God told them, I got something different for you. And because God was with them, and because He had other things to do. They had all kinds of people of God around them. They did have some soldiers, but God was with them. So I have to tell you two things this morning. One is for the kids. I guess they're for everybody, but particularly for the kids. I want you, all the kids here, I want you to look first of all at Goliath. See how big and nasty looking he is? Okay. He could be pretty scary if you ran across him. And sometimes there are people and things in life that are kind of scary, even for adults. Adults, believe it or not, they get scared of stuff. Okay. This guy looks pretty scary, but we don't have to be scared of him. He's just a bully. And bullies can be pretty scary, but we don't have to be worried about him. Partly because, like David, and like Joshua, and like Gideon, we don't have to look at him all the time. I want you to stop looking at him right now. Instead, I want you to look at all the people who are around you. Look at everybody else who's here. Go ahead. Look at everybody else who's here. Okay. Joshua had all those people of God who marched the city around the city with him, didn't he? And David had all the rest of God's people with him to fight the enemy. And Gideon had all of God's people, the ones who showed up to fight and the ones who went home. He had all of God's people. Look around again at everybody who's here. These are all of the people of God. Okay? If you ever think that you're alone with something big and scary or a big bully, I want you to look at all these people and remember all these people who are here and say, these people are with you. These are the people of God. These are the people that God has put around you to be your people, your friends, your family, the people that God has set around you so that you know that you're not alone and that you never fight alone and you never stand alone and you never have to face anything like those guys alone. There's always people with you, even if you can't see them, even if you're not here on Sunday morning. And that goes for adults here too. Adults, we're going to leave this place and it's going to come, I don't know, maybe Tuesday or Thursday or someplace like that. I want you to know you're not alone. We're all here in this together. But secondly, I want you kids especially to know this. Gideon had all of God's people, but he only had some soldiers to fight. Saul had all of God's people, but he had some who were trained as special soldiers to fight. Not everybody was fighting Goliath's army, just the soldiers were. There were farmers and there were moms and dads and teachers and others who stayed home. Okay? There are people in God's people who are specially trained to do some things and to be special helpers. We have some of those people. I want to show the kids especially some of those. We have some folks like that who we have trained, and they went through special training to help the kids especially. Okay, here are some pictures of some of them. Okay, and they're trained not to be just, not to be only family and friends and be with you as people of God, but they're trained, and their training is called stewards of children. I know you don't know what that means, but what that means is this. If you need help, you can find them and say, I need help with something. Okay? You could talk to them. You could go to them. It might be something as simple as, can you help me get a drink of water? Okay? But especially with these people, it might be, you know what, there's somebody at school that's being a bully, and I don't know how to deal with it. Can you help me with that? Here's some more. Okay? It might be, there's somebody in my neighborhood who's being mean to me. I don't know what to do about it. Can you help me talk to mom and dad about it? And they'll help you. It might be, I don't know what it is. But these are people who are like the soldiers that David had, and that Gideon had, and that Joshua had, and they're just for kids here among God's people. So I want you to know, first of all, that you're not alone. You have the people of God with you. Second of all, we have special people who can help you with other things that you might need too. And we're going to, and there's more even that I have a third frame that I have to get some pictures in yet. And we're going to put these up out there where that table is out there so that you guys, kids, can see them. We're not going to put them up here where I can see them. We're going to put them down here where you can see them. So if you say, who are those people that I can go to if I need some help with something, you can go there and say, oh, that guy who looks like that, that's who that is. I'll go find him. And you can get some help for whatever you might need, okay? Besides mom and dad. And the third thing I want to tell everybody is this. So after our vacation Bible school, after we learned about Joshua, and after we learned about David, and as I was thinking about Gideon and the armies and all that other stuff, I went home yesterday afternoon and just kind of crashed out for a while, chilled out. And lo and behold, if I didn't discover that TNT Network was having an all-day Uber marathon of the Lord of the Rings movies. It's like one of my favorites, 3 of my favorites, all in one day, just ceaselessly. And I did not watch all of them. I had to record the last one because I had to go, it was past my bedtime. Okay. But I was watching the second one, The Two Towers, and you're probably, maybe you aren't Lord of the Rings fans, so I won't bore you with the particulars, but there's one particular segment in the second one where there's these 2 little guys, Merry and Pippin, they're hobbits, they're just little guys, and they get caught up in this battle, and it's a very nasty battle with some really, really, really nasty, ugly, evil, mean, and wicked, nasty, terrible critters, orcs and wizards and nasty things, and they're in this battle. But the people who are fighting the battle against the bad guys are called Ents, and they look like trees. It's like walking trees, okay? And they're sitting up in the branches of this tree that walks and talks, and these tree guys are throwing big boulders and stuff at these bad guys, and, you know, they're doing all this. And these 2 little bitty guys are in this midst of this terrible battle against these evil things and whatnot. And all they can do in the midst of this really terrible battle, in order to make it through the battle, the only thing they can do is hang on to the tree. That's all they can do. They've got no weapons, they've got no armor, they've got nobody except the 2 of them, and the only way they're going to make it through this whole ordeal is to just hang on tight to that tree. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. We've talked about Joshua, and you might forget about Joshua. It might take you a few months. It might take you a few minutes. I don't know. You might see these pictures over here, and you might remember that, or you might forget it. You might think about this little song that we did, put on the armor, put on the armor, put on the armor of God. And somebody will say, what's the armor of God? And you'll say, I forget. It might take you a couple minutes, or it might take you a long time. I don't know. Or you might forget about David, or you might even forget this sermon, okay? You might think, you might not even remember who all these people are. But you might find yourself someday in a situation where you don't know what you can do. You don't know if you have armor, you don't have weapons, you don't know what your people are. You might find yourself like you're a little bitty person in a really, really tough situation, and you say, what am I supposed to do? And here's what I want you to remember. Hang on to the tree. This one. Because the one person we haven't talked about is Jesus, right? Hang on to this tree. This is the tree. This always reminds us of Jesus, the cross does. You know, we have a prayer just after Easter time that we always say at communion time for about 6-8 weeks. We talk about, actually it's a prayer that talks about the devil. Okay? It says, the devil once overcame by a tree, and now he has been overcome by a tree. The devil once tempted Adam and Eve by the fruit of a tree, and now Jesus has beat him by this tree, by this cross. The cross is always reminds us of what Jesus has done for us. It's always told us that Jesus has already won the battle. No matter how big the enemy is, no matter how fearsome he looks, no matter how scared we might be, Jesus has already won the battle. Jesus has already taken care of it. Jesus has already given us the victory, and we don't have to be afraid. No matter how tiny we seem to be, and no matter how fierce things seem to look for us, for any of us, hang on to the tree. And that's how we get through. Hang on to that tree. That's the cross of Jesus. I don't care what else you remember or don't remember about this Vacation Bible School. I hope you remember a lot. I hope you remember that. I hope you remember this. I hope you remember songs. I hope you remember one another. I hope you remember the family of God. I hope you remember the soldiers, the stewards of children. But I really do hope you remember, if nothing else, hang on to the tree, because Jesus has already won every battle. That's it. Let's bring the offering.